All right, so now we want to hear a perspective from some of our national boards and agency staff, and we're going to start off with, and I'm just going to introduce them as they are going to speak, and we're going to start off with Jenny Phillips who is going to be on film. And so Jenny has sent a message from us. Jenny is a Creation Care Program Manager with the United Methodist Commission on Relief Unit of Global Ministries, and she leads the Earth Keepers program. Yay, Jenny.
Hi, my name is Reverend Jenny Phillips, and I'm the Creation Care Program Manager at Global Ministries. I was asked to share a little bit about how we as United Methodists can make a significant collective impact in caring for God's creation. A huge area where I feel like we have a lot of work to do is in property management. The United Methodist Church owns $57 billion in church property around the U.S. These are buildings and land in cities, in rural areas, in suburbs, and everywhere in between. And the potential for all these properties to demonstrate our creation care values and how they are managed is huge. From energy and water efficiency to renewable energy, to waste management, to land use, food development and growing, inclusivity and welcome. There are so many ways in which we can express our values through our property. And one of the ways that we need to get there is by getting the people who care about the environment onto the church trustees committees and the church finance committees, because that's where decisions about investments and changes to property are made. Another area where we need to do some work is around race. I'm looking out in the room there, and it looks like most of you are white from where I stand. It seems to me that this room does not reflect the diversity of the United Methodist Church in the U.S. or beyond. And that's a huge concern because we all know that environmental degradation and climate change disproportionately impact people of color. White people are not going to be able to meaningfully address this if we don't start dealing with white supremacy and addressing our white privilege. So I urge the white people in the room to start looking hard at the ways in which their whiteness gives them privilege in society. A couple resources I want to recommend that we use in the Earth Keepers training are White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Olu. These are two excellent texts, and there are many more great resources through the General Commission on Religion and Race that I would encourage you to study, reflect on, and figure out how you can deepen your relationships by understanding your privilege. I also urge you, if you haven't already participated in an Earth Keepers training, to join us for one of our trainings, either in Austin, September 26th through 29th, or in Chicago, October 24th through 27th. You can learn more at www.umcmission.org/earthkeepers. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Notice how all my helpers are appearing now. They don't even trust me to do anything, which is great. I think this is my last time of responsibility for any of this, too, so hey, yay. Okay, next we have Elizabeth Chunhali, who is the United Methodist Women's Executive for Economic, Environmental Justice, and Climate Justice, and goes by Liz, too.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm going to put my timer on because Phyllis knows that I could be on time. Okay, so for such a time as this, So creation care has been a mandate and a call that runs throughout Scripture. But as a church, I think we can say we have failed. We have commodified God's creation and peoples and nations, and with the climate crisis, sea level rising, which is directly caused by the extraction and burning of fossil fuels that pollute the bodies of marginalized communities in the United States and around the world, those least responsible bearing the brunt, both here and around the world. And we heard about Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And especially for those of us who reside in the US, as Jackie said, we're only, 4% of the population, but have emitted 25% of cumulative greenhouse gas emissions. So we have a great responsibility for such a time as this. We have the opportunity to address and stop the climate crisis because it is also an environmental justice issue, a racial issue, a gender justice issue, an economic issue, a decolonization issue, an American hegemony issue. Because it is how we can live out the words of Luke 4 of breaking the bonds of injustice. And we, like other agencies, have membership located in local contexts, but are a national organization. In one of our iterations, we said, okay, reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the top emitting sectors, transportation and electricity in the US, and we're going to ask our members to focus on methane reduction, right? It's 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year time period, and warming the earth has negative health impacts, et cetera, but our members were fighting in some areas against pipeline development, against nuclear plants in another, coal power plants in another, air pollution from diesel fuel buses. So we changed our strategy, have a bigger meta goal that all of our members could seek to advance. So, just energy for all, caring for God's creation, through an equitable and just transition. And the focus has not been only to look at the problem and what to stop, but the solution. We already have clean, renewable energy. Over 100 cities and 100 companies have committed to 100% RE. And I know that many of you are involved in advancing that work and have been doing that so faithfully. But it must also be clean. It must also be just. There must also be equity. Justice for environmental communities and indigenous peoples who have been harmed by the pollution of fossil fuels are ready. Principles of free, prior, and informed consent, and justice for all of God's creation. So, yes, for just such a time as this, let's focus on clean, renewable energy in cities, states, countries, companies, but ensure justice. But, as others have said, we should not do this alone. There are so many organizations in this healing work of creation. They may not call it healing, but that is what they're doing. They are stewards. And we should not only partner with green groups like Sierra Club or interfaith green groups like Interfaith Power and Light, but in particular, civil rights groups like NAACP, environmental justice groups and frontline communities like Georgia WAND, and youth organizations like Sunrise, who are already directly impacted by climate change and climate pollution. And we go in as learners and collaborators. Lastly, I know that many of us who do the work, care deeply about God's creation, can feel discouraged that there are so few of us, right? Surely we should have a general conference worth of people at an event like this, right? Because we care about what God is calling us. This is in the Genesis narrative, John 3:16, we can go on. And that our friends, our church, our bishops are not doing their part. And I want to acknowledge that. We need more people, absolutely. But I don't want that to deter or depress us if everyone does not have a Damascus Road conversion. Sociologist Erica Chenoweth, who studies the overthrow of dictatorships and social movements, like the toppling of Milosevic, has noted that only a certain percentage of the population is needed for social transformation. It's not 50%. It's not 20, it's not even 10. 3.5% of the population. Just 3.5% who are undeterred. We don't need to get hung up on everyone in the church being doers, but only a few of us who are willing to persist and seek transformation to achieve climate justice. And my question that I have with this is, are we being bold enough in what God is calling us in caring for God's creation? Are we bold enough? Are we willing to take the risks that other organizations are doing? As we engage, will we escalate the engagement as well? Will we engage in nonviolent civil disobedience if that is what we sense God is calling us to do? So let's do our part in being and joining the 3.5%, wearing our hat proudly as United Methodists and a people of faith to cut our dependence on the legalized drug of fossil fuel and instead be fueled by a clean, renewable energy that advances justice and equity for all. Thank you.
Laura Kigueba James, and who is the organizing program coordinator for the Board of Church and Society.
Hello. Yes. Well, good afternoon. How are we doing, people? Yes. Bring the energy. Bring the energy. Yes, I know that you all have been sitting and listening for quite some time. So I do want to introduce myself, and then I have a question that we can talk about briefly together. So again, my name is Laura Kigueba James. I'm the organizing program coordinator at the General Board of Church and Society. Shout outs to John Hill, the Assistant General Secretary. Many of you know him as well. So we're working together, and we are here with you all for the next couple of days to really figure out what is it like to build a movement. I just want to acknowledge, as an agency, we are charged with the social teachings, meaning the foundations of the social principles that are biblically, theologically, as well as communally created to really emphasize what is it that we believe as a church and how do we live that out. So at the General Board of Church and Society, we have 5 priorities: peace, poverty, climate, health, and migration, in which we connect the social principles to really live out as an agency and throughout our church. And we do this through educating, organizing, and advocating for change. But my question is to you all, with all of that said, how did you hear in the last couple of hours? How did you hear, what did you hear about what does it look like to address climate change? What did you hear? If you could walk out of this room today with a solution, what did you hear today about how we're going to address climate change? Systemic. One. What else? Interfaith involvement. What else? Relationships. What else? Realistic outlook. What else? Persistent. What else? Global. What else? Say that again. Collaboration. Passion, spirituality. Personal commitment. Anything else? Sacrifice, strategy. I want you all to recognize that it's not just one solution. Each of us comes from a different community. We are connected to a different culture that God has uniquely created, and it will take all of us with our different perspectives, with our different understandings, to really work together to address this change. You know, many of us kind of want to march on forward and be like, yeah, we all believe and we'll do the same thing, but will the change actually happen? In our organizing work, what we do when we visit local churches is we want to get to know the current culture of each and every single church, because we know that what's happening in Zimbabwe and what's happening in Arkansas is not the same thing. But it will take all of us as a united Methodist church to really make a change. So I just want to encourage you all to not just look for this one solution, whether you're here or when you go back home, but to really be in tune with what is happening in my community. So I have another question for you as well. Raise your hand if your pastor knows that you're here. Awesome. raise your hand if you've talked to at least 5 different people at your church about why you care. Not about what other people have said, but why you care about climate change. Okay, one last question. How many of you have talked to your representative or senator about why you've cared? Okay. I think another part of this, when we talk about what change looks like, how change really will happen, is not just to have connections with our community, but also to monthly, not just when an action alert is going or there's a current campaign, but to monthly be engaged with our representatives and senators. Because often it's not just, the statistics or the big campaigns that are happening, but a lot of our reps, or a lot of our senators want to hear really, what are you risking? What are you doing when it comes to addressing the change that we all need? I think that's it. Thank you.
This next, I think, is a tag team. We've got Amos Nascimento and Mark Davies, again, with the Board of Higher Education and Ministry in the lead hub.
Hello again. Thank you. This is great. And I'll try to do the same thing, but first I want to tell you about the General Board of Higher Education Ministry. So from our perspective, one thing you need to know that we have several general agencies in the church doing different type of work, very much like we just heard. We have the Methodist Women, we have the General Board of Church Society. Here we have the General Board of Discipleship or Discipleship Ministries, and we also have General Board of Global Ministries and many other 13 agencies in the United Methodist Church and 4 large program agencies, right? And so what does the Board of Education, the former Board of Education, now the Board of Higher Education Ministry, do? Well, you'll probably receive through our students, thank you again for helping us this booklet that tells the story, so I don't have to tell you. 150 years ago, more than 150 years ago, in 1866, when this country was devastated by all kinds of catastrophe related to war, the Methodist Church then, the Southern Methodist Church, the Episcopal Methodist Church in the South and North, decided to invest in education. Out of that, we created education institutions all over the world, and this booklet will tell you part of that story. Here's the thing. Already at that time was not limited to the South, was not limited to the United States, was all over the world. We had, for you to have an idea, at the turn of the century, around 1900, we had 60 universities in China. We had institutions in Germany, institutions in Japan, the first institutions for women in India. We just heard from them today. So we have this network that's being built very much based on Wesley's idea of the world being our parish, and this is also a resource we have. We've heard from students today, we see they're here today, and that's where we have lots of energy. That's where we have lots of interest, people interested in many ways of being engaged, and I think we can use those resources. In the United States alone, we have today more than 115 institutions of education, of higher education, and 13 theological institutions. Let me do the same trick. Let me use the same trick. How many of you have gone through one of our United Methodist related institutions of education? Theological education or higher education? All right. 3 of them. There you go. You get the prize. Okay, you get the prize. You get this leaflet talking about scholarships. This is one example of the work we do, providing scholarships for more students, more of you, more people come to our institutions, where, for example, they'll have to learn about the social principles. And then, of course, I want to you call attention upon this particular piece here, which is a map showing the locations. We're talking about 1,048 institutions, schools, colleges, universities. I'm not counting kindergarten. We should count them as well. Daycare. So we have a network, and as a matter of fact, if we start talking about this when people get to college, we're too late. We should be talking and teaching and and interacting with our children as early as they care. As early as they care, because that's when we learn. So here you see a map of our institutions, as well as a series of activities we're promoting. One more thing I'd like to mention, very much in light of what we just heard. We also have several concepts. I see Tim here. He works with green seminary. That's the word, green. Eco-theology. We work with theological institutions, and a lot of folks are doing eco-theology. We heard words or concepts such as nature, creation care. We talked about climate change, environment. So the variety of contexts we have is also corresponding to a variety of concepts. And sometimes we think that we're close to that concept, to that idea, in that language. And here's from our perspective, as a general board of the church that works globally, is the idea that we can move beyond our specific concepts. They speak to particular concepts. So the idea, maybe at the end of this conference, we may see how those different ideas can merge, how those ideas can lead to a common purpose. And I think that's something that we can work together. As part of our work, we also have what we call the lead hubs, and Mark Davis has been leading one of them here in North America. We have 10 more around the world, so we don't have to travel. So we have people on the ground doing the work, and we can learn from them. So Mark will tell more about what kind of work they're doing here in the United States.
So Oklahoma City University, Emory University, and Boston University are my 3 United Methodist schools that I attended. And one of the things that I'm doing in the position I'm working in now with the lead hub in the United States is to connect with those other 112 or so Methodist schools, colleges, universities, include seminaries, to see how we can network together to focus on some initiatives that are very vital for our society and for the world today. And one of those initiatives that we're looking at is developing, it's an ongoing development of an environmental network to focus on an ecological responsibility initiative. And we're especially wanting to engage faculty from our Methodist-related schools, colleges, and universities. Faculty, as you may know, end up staying at the institution longer than perhaps any other person would stay at the institution. Staff sometimes as well, but administration doesn't stay quite as long as the other staff and faculty. And these are the persons that have some institutional memory, a lot of continuity, and we want to connect with them to see what we can do to enhance each other's work on environmental curriculum, co-curricular activities, research, even activism that we're doing at our campuses. And so as we connect the faculty, then we're obviously going to also connect the students. I was very impressed by the way Jenny Phillips made me think she was actually looking at us in the video. But I am looking at you right now, and I'll say the room is younger than the room was last year. And we were intentional about getting young people there last year, right? But also this year. And it's a little bit more diverse than it has been at perhaps some past meetings. And we've been very intentional about that. And we want to be very intentional about that as we move forward with this environmental network of faculty and students at our United Methodist and Methodist-related schools, colleges, universities. Just a couple things coming up. Tomorrow, we're going to be really looking at what we can do as a network and trying to move that forward. And then also, we want to connect with other organizations like the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, the Green Seminary Initiative. I failed to mention Interfaith Power and Light before, but they're another great organization to connect with. So it's not just about connecting in the universities, but also with these other organizations that can help us move forward. Thank you.
Can I take advantage of that? Just let's see who are it's great that you mentioned diversity. Who are the students in fact here with us today? May you please stand so people can get to know, can see you. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's wonderful. All right, and last but not least, we have Oh, yeah, thank you. Anita Green, who is the Director of Sustainable Investment Services for WestPath Benefits and Investments. Anita?
Hi, everyone. Yep, it's working. So thank you for inviting me here and inviting me to share a little bit about what WestPath does. So WestPath is a general agency of the United Methodist Church. So my perspective is at the institutional level. So as I'm kind of going through my remarks here, I would invite you to reflect upon the institutions that you may touch upon, whether it would be local church or college or university, perhaps your employer or even your municipality. So just a quick word about WestPath for those who are not familiar with us. We offer health plans and pension asset management for clergy and lay employees of the United Methodist Church. And in addition to that, our WestPath Institutional Investments Division manages institutional assets for United Methodist related institutions such as foundations, hospitals, universities, etc. So our objective at WestPath as an institutional investor is to provide long-term value creation for our participants and for our clients. Our clergy would like to retire and they would like to retire securely, and we want to be able to make that happen. And our clients are looking for this money to help them do their own mission or their own sustainable work, and so we want to be able to support them as well. To do that, that means that we need to be able to assess significant investment risk, and then we need to manage that. We consider climate to be an investment risk. And that's why we're focused on investing in ways to support the transition, the global transition to a low-carbon economy. So, the effects of climate change are pervasive across industries, and as we've heard here today, global in scale. And the longer that the world delays action, the more drastic the action needs to be. The more drastic the action needs to be, the more volatility it's going to build into the financial markets, and that means we may have more volatility in our pension plans, which of course we do not want. So at WestPath, we've developed a climate action plan to help us address climate risk within our portfolio. And I'll just tell you, I'll just pause here. I brought a few copies of our new sustainable investment report. So the things that I'm talking to you about will be in here. I only brought 30 copies because, paper. And they're on a table out there, but this is online on the website as well if you're interested, because I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly. So the Climate Action Plan has 3 steps. State your belief, assess, and act. And that's it. State your belief, assess, and act. So in 2017, WestPath's Board of Directors approved a new investment belief. So our investment beliefs are 10 principles that tell our participants and our clients, these are what we believe as an investor. And we added a low carbon transition belief to our list of investment beliefs. And this says that we believe that a global transition to a low carbon economy is happening, and that this transition is going to create winners and losers across countries, industries, and companies, and that as a prudent fiduciary, we need to be managing those risks. So with that investment belief in place, we then began to assess our portfolio. So we did some carbon footprinting exercises to see where we were, took an assessment of where we were. And then under the act accordingly, there are a few steps that we've taken. And many of these we've taken since we met last year in Minneapolis. But this first step we've had in place since 2014, and that is that we've placed some limitations on investing in thermal coal, and that's across all of our funds. And then last year we launched the Social Values Choice suite of funds. So that's 3 funds that are fossil fuel free. So we have 1 equity and 2 bond funds that do not have fossil fuels in them. We've also placed some investments in sustainable forestry, agribusiness, and supporting off-grid renewable energy in developing nations. We've also chosen some of our investment managers because they offer a low-carbon solutions portfolio, so we've deployed some capital there as well. And then when I was here last year with you, well, I guess in Minneapolis, I mentioned that we were developing a new kind of transition readiness strategy. And so we finished that and we launched that. And this transition readiness strategy is a way for us to evaluate companies on how they're preparing for the transition to the low carbon economy. So we are using this strategy to reward the companies that are doing a better job of preparing by allocating more capital to those companies, and then withholding, allocating less capital to the companies that are less prepared. So we've had this strategy. It's in our U.S. Equity Fund and International Equity Fund, if you're familiar with our funds. We launched about $750 million last fall, and so far we're very pleased with how it's performing. We know that we have about 50% less emissions intensity than the benchmark, and we have a 40% higher allocation to clean tech through this fund, and the performance has, I mean, we're a long-term investor. This is like 7-8 months worth of performance, but you know, it's been good. We're outperforming the benchmark. So we're very pleased with that. And now we want to see if we can take this strategy and now add it, replicate it in some other asset classes, and you know, continue to do more. So where we are right now, we have around 6% of our total assets, and we have about $24 billion in assets under management, and about 6 of that is invested in low carbon solutions. In addition to these positive investments, we also engage companies that we invest in. So we talk to companies about essentially how they're preparing for the low carbon transition, how they're aligning their business with the Paris Climate Agreement. And a lot of those engagements are documented in this report. So in addition to that, we've also kind of taken a look in-house at what we're doing. And we have a green team that we've been able to get going and has a lot of support. And earlier this year, we launched a composting program at Westpath. So with our composting, in addition to the recycling that we're doing, we estimate that we're diverting about 70% of our waste from the landfill. We want to try to see if we can drive that number up, but right now we're at about 70%. And then we've also talked to our electric provider, and we've switched over, and we're now 100% green energy certified. And that's very new. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, you know, another way to drive this just transition is through public policy. So as an institutional investor, you know, we can deploy our capital in certain ways, and we can talk to companies about being more energy efficient or about getting ready for the transition, but we really need that policy piece. We need that framework to really push those companies. And we're hearing it very clearly here today. You know, this is a place where we need to do a lot of work, and your elected representatives do need to hear your voice. One thing that we did try to do last year is be a little bit better about working with our colleagues at the other agencies about comment letters on proposed legislation. And so we were able to work with GBGM, GBCS, and UMW we were getting ready to send a comment letter to, you know, reach out to them and say, we think that the United Methodist voice needs to be heard here. And they were able to sort of work with us, and then they developed letters. And so we had a few occasions where we were able to have the United Methodist voice a little bit more strategically heard on some of these public policy initiatives. But we're trying that out. It seems to be working well, and we'd like to try to continue that going forward. So thank you.
All right, this is great. Thank you so much. And I hope that we've accomplished some of what we hope to this afternoon with just getting some different perspectives, getting your thoughts going, kind of priming the pump for the strategizing that will happen tomorrow. Okay, so just a few quick announcements. One is that supper will be at 6 o'clock, and they don't want us to get there before 6 o'clock, so hang out here just for a few more minutes before heading over to the Susie Gray Dining Hall. And then this evening, and it's certainly optional, some of you may just want to rest, but this evening we are going to be dividing into 4 groups, and Amos is going to give us access to the Board of Higher Education in ministry. I think I'm looking the right direction. Yeah, just that way across 19th Avenue. And what's the best way, and we're looking at trying to do that around 7:15. What's the best way to connect with you? And also Liz with the United Methodist Women is going to be going over there as well. So what would be the best way to meet here in the lobby, everybody who wanted to go that way, or what?
Right in front of the chapel.
Right in front of the chapel.
Chapel is
Yeah, I think now it's working.
Chapel is right next to us here.
Yeah.
And almost is suggesting to just meet right in front of Whiteman Chapel, just between Whiteman Chapel and 19th.
And from there, you'll see the building, and we can walk together now, open the doors right now.
And for United Methodist Women, it's not only for members of United Methodist Women. In the other category, in any of the other entities, you are welcome to join us, especially if you want to talk about Just Energy for All and some of the connections that are possible.
Right. And
Where are we meeting? We are going across the street along with Higher Ed to Kern's building, is it called? Kern building. Yeah. So we'll meet here and then move over.
You'll need to go together. If you want to be part of that, be sure to before 7:15 to be out there in front of Whiteman Chapel, because the doors are not just open at this time of night. So, and then I want to say about that.
Well, about the higher education group. Just to be clear, one of the groups going over to the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry would be the students and faculty from our Methodist-related institutions of higher education, but also students and faculty from other institutions of higher education to come to get to know each other and also begin to look ahead to what we're wanting to accomplish tomorrow.
Great, thank you for that clarification. And then the Earth Keepers will be here, and then the other group, if there is an other group, and I feel certain that if you are an other and want to be at any of these ones, you're welcome to be there too. But if you want a miscellaneous group, I will be meeting with that group. I may just sit up there by myself. Who knows? Rest, whatever. Practice my tech skills. And that'll be right above us in the Kreitner room. Just go up the stairs. There's elevators down that way, or steps right here. And there's just a small meeting room up the stairs called the Kreitner room on the second floor. So that's this evening. Tomorrow morning, Bill Middlefield is going to have an electric car show. Just whoever's got hybrids or pure electric or whatever out in the parking lot A at 7 o'clock.
At 7:30 before breakfast, come on out and talk about electric cars and see my new Outlander plug-in.
Yeah, right. I might drive our Leaf tomorrow, so we'll see. And then just one other thing, and just well, Bill said it, but just to remind you that breakfast is from 7:30 to 8:30 tomorrow, and also then 8:30 is when we start with communion service, and that will be here. And is Grace Hackney here? Grace, good. Could we connect just for a minute here? Okay, because Grace is going to be leading that service. Is there any other announcement that needs to be made? Any of the planners or Dan? Well, okay, so I think that supper's next, and then the meeting's this evening, or rest. And thank you. I think we've had a great start to this day, and thank our panel up here, and go with peace.